Hey, one more thing before you go. What is the current state of human evolution and the challenges that we face as a species? Are we in a critical transition period? And do we need to act collectively and responsibly to address the global problems that threaten our survival and dignity? In this episode, we're going to have a conversation with a man that has written a book and has over 40 years' experience in digging into this subject. So we may answer some of these questions and more. I'm your host, Michael Hurst. Welcome to One More Thing Before You Go. My guest in this episode is Jeffrey Charles Hardy. He's a healthcare facility planner, a design consultant with 30 years of experience. He's also the founder and president of Care for Peace, a nonprofit organization that helps underserved communities build their own sustainable, healthy villages. He's got quite a story. Jeff is a prolific writer and a speaker on topics such as patient safety, hospital design, and healthcare administration. He's also the author of a visionary book called To Care for Peace, a global mandate to secure the second human evolution in perpetuity, which we're going to talk about. It proposes a global plan to secure a sustainable future for humanity and the planet. In his book, he argues that caring for peace is the key to activating the second human evolution, which is yet to begin. Jeff, thank you for joining me today.
Thank you, Michael. That's a great intro. Thank you. I'm going to have to copy that, hand it out.
You earned it. You earned it. Yeah, what an amazing journey you've been on.
It's been wonderful. But it's all been basically planning. I like planning. And so after 40 years of planning healthcare facilities, I decided, well, heck, why not plan the rest of humanity and give humanity a chance?
Yeah, there you go.
That's really what we're talking about. Let's plan the second human evolution.
Well, you know, it's. I know we're going to get more in depth into that to understand what the first human evolution is and where it came from, as well as what the second evolution is. But there are so many aspects of this that we need to kind of, I guess, fine tune, like climate change and global and politics and all these contributions that come into our society and culture that we live in today. We're going to have a great conversation, I think.
I'm sure we will.
I like to start at the beginning. Can I ask where you grew up?
Let's see. I was born in New York, and my parents moved me out here with my sister when I was a year and a half. So I pretty much grew up in Central California or Northern. I don't know. We called it Central until I realized that there was something further south than San Francisco. So we live right above San Francisco, and that's where I went to school. I went to college in Sacramento and some other colleges, universities to get specialized courses. But that's where I grew up, California.
What did you want to be when you grew up?
Well, what my parents wanted me to be was an architect, and what I wanted to be was messing around. I wanted to just go have fun. I don't know. I mean,
yeah,
I ended up getting both, but
I think we all went. Well, yeah, because you went into the Coast Guard, right?
I sure did.
So that's work, but it's also fun.
Oh my gosh, it was awesome, and I will tell you, I'm one of the few people on the planet who really enjoyed boot camp. I loved getting up at 5 o'clock in the morning and marching, and up 2, 3, 4. I mean, that was so much a part of my spirit. I mean, I got up at 5 o'clock anyway. I have a lot of energy. So it was perfect. Yeah.
I think you had a different drill instructor than I did.
I don't know. There were some guys who fell down when we were marching, but that's probably because they went to the officers club and got a little bit too soused the night before.
Too soused, yeah. My drill instructor made it miserable to get up at 5 in the morning. But it stuck with me, though,
That's great. That's great. Well, what did he do? Did he yell at you right away?
Well, the scream, the holler, the yell, the just the presence, the ominous presence of him looking down at you right there in your face. Yeah. When you're like 18 and 19 years old and you're having to look up at this massive mountain of person.
Yeah, that's right, sir. Yes, sir.
Yeah. So yeah,
Too funny.
it's interesting. Interesting. What'd you do in the Coast Guard?
I was a hospital corpsman trainee, and what that meant was I served bedpans. And then after that,
It's
after a
important.
while, I got to actually hand out pills. It had the guy's name on these little cups, so it wasn't difficult. And then I actually got to give shots. My favorite shot was when my drill instructor came in, and he had to have a gamma globulin shot before going to Vietnam. And oh boy, I enjoyed that a lot because that is a very thick liquid shot that goes in their buns, and you put it in there and you go, ha, 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 ha,
Yeah, I'm living vicariously through you at the moment. It's yeah.
ha.
Thank
So y'all would know it was great. It was really great.
yeah. Thank you for that vicarious experience. I appreciate it. I could just visualize it. It works. What got you interested in what you are doing now? I mean, how'd you come to where you're at?
Well, I think the book is To Care for Peace, but the idea of caring for peace began long time before I went into the Coast Guard. But then when I was in the Coast Guard, it really gelled because I had a feeling in my spirit, well, I was taking care of those guys. And first of all, they were really cool. Here's patients, they're lying down, they've got to look at you, they got to listen and respect you. And I'd never had anybody, especially guys in the playing field, look at me like that before. So all of a sudden, it was a wonderful feeling. And I realized that, wow, this care process is really enjoyable. And I had a feeling, a new kind of a feeling that was what I called peace. And it wasn't the peace between two wars. It wasn't the peace after a war. And it wasn't a peace where you sit on top of a mountain and cross your legs and don't think about the people that are down in the valleys struggling for their food and their lives. So all of a sudden, this thought of caring for peace would be it just started to gel. And it was only as my life unfolded in my healthcare design career, where I was working all over the United States, working all over the world, that I met nurses. And I realized that all these people already know what it means to care for peace. And it just got me. It was like, wow, I got to meet a nurse today because they all have it in their spirit. They love taking care of patients. You go to parties and there's a nurse there and they're still wearing their scrubs from work because they're proud of the hospital name that's on their shirt. I mean, nurses are the salt of the earth. And and so are other caregivers, I realized, teachers and other service personnel, people in the military. Of course, I started in the military. And the officers and the enlisted guys that I worked with, top of the world, absolutely. In fact, it was a physician, Dr. Carl Mangold, who was a lieutenant and in the Coast Guard, who got me started on this whole thing, this whole process that I went through. But the rest of the story is just as exciting. And because Care for Peace ended up becoming the name of a nonprofit organization. It became a song that we had some local talented a cappella choir singing the darn song, and it was just, I mean, Care for Peace is just an amazing concept.
I think you can hear that. Somebody can hear that on your website. I think
Yes, they
there's
can.
a link for
Yeah,
that. There's a
they,
link up there. I saw
yeah,
it. Yeah,
yeah.
beautiful.
They can go to careforpeace.org, care for peace, all one word, .org, and actually listen to the song. Yeah, sung actually by other people.
Plus, you can see all the other fantastic work that you guys do and what you do for the nonprofit with
Thank you.
helping people. I mean, you have built international healthcare facilities and hospitals and things like this all over the world. Is that correct?
Yeah, I'm saying yeah because the most recent project is the most glorious, and so I've kind of forgotten, you know, Curacao, Bahamas, Bahrain, and the Persian Gulf, Vietnam. because I ended up going to Vietnam after the war and helping some people in Hanoi. But the most recent project was in Myanmar, Burma, that that country. Oh, look, you can look at it. It's right there on my map, right there for anybody there. I have to move my hand,
Uh,
and that is one of the most undeveloped countries in the world. It's number 91 in its development process. It's in turmoil right now. But when we were there during a very small window that was opened by Aung San Suu Kyi. And so we went over and decided to help them build one prototype rural community development and health center, and it was beautiful. We finished it. We finished it with the help of the government, with a lot of help of the villagers in this selected village, and we were ready to build 250 more in the country. But guess what happened? You probably already know. The military coup overthrew Aung San Suu Kyi and her government, and all of a sudden we were persona non grata. So that's when I decided to write a book. I didn't have anything else to do.
yeah, that would kind of tend to change your direction, change your
Yeah.
pathway just a little bit.
Yeah.
Like, and you talk about the human evolution, like the first human evolution, and then we talk about the second human evolution that's coming about in suspended human evolution. Can you help us break down each one of those? Like the first human evolution. I mean, we all know we've been here, and if you look at what we've achieved, even in the last 150 years, what we've achieved as a society,
Mm.
made immense progress. I've noticed in some of the readings that I've read in regard to you and your book and what you talk about, I think that some of the things that stuck out with me actually in regard to that is that I think we as a society have grown more greedy and more opportunist than we had in the past.
Mm.
But let's kind of can we break it down a little bit and let's talk about the first human evolution and so people can understand
Yeah.
what we're talking about.
Well. First of all, it's best for me to make a very simple story that occurred when I was touring. I was in India. I was in a air conditioned taxi cab on the way from New Delhi to Agra, where the Taj Mahal is. And all of a sudden, at one point on our trip, we were stuck in the most horrendous traffic jam you could imagine. It was just taxis and cars, and you know those buses that are just packed with all sorts of containers on the top, and people sitting on top of the containers, and the buses had been painted, and people had stuck things on the buses, and all around me were mopeds that couldn't even move, and I was saying, what the heck is this? This is like the end of the world. All of a sudden humanity is jam packed. And so that's when I says, maybe we have evolved as far as we can, and it's like this is the end. This is the end of maybe it's the first human evolution. Well, that kind of stuck in my head for a long time until I started realizing that around the mid 60s, in the last millennium, the first human evolution ended. So you look at 2.5 million years ago when humanity first started fiddling around with tools and starting to be civilized and tribal and national and all that. That was 2.5 million years ago. That was the beginning, but the end was probably sometime around when the mutually assured destruction came up, and we realized in many different ways that humanity had conquered nature. And that's what we're stuck with right now. So, from the mid 60s to now, we've been flopping around. We are in the suspended human evolution, and we need to start planning. I'm a planner. So, I started thinking, okay, as a planner, how would I suggest to change the world, but I don't want to change the world. That's an expression. I think it's even a song title. What I want to do is I want to provide the tools, the planning tools, to design the second human evolution. I'm not a super brilliant guy. I got some tools, and I figured, gee, now I can't continue with Myanmar. Why don't I figure out how to do this, on a global scale? So it begins with what I call pre-planning. It's not even planning, and the pre-planning is, guess what? It's what you are doing. It's the it's this process of talking with people and getting our words right and using the right words. And that's when I realized that we better start using first human evolution. Oh, we're in the second human evolution. No, we're not in this human. We're still partially. We got a foot still in the first human evolution. And what's fascinating is I've been talking about this with many people. And when I was in Myanmar, I had a little group of people with some medical doctors and nurses and other professional people who were talking about. I said, "Well, when did the first human evolution in your mind?" Well, they mentioned that it was the saffron revolution in, let's see, 1988, because that's when all the monks in Myanmar decided to strike, and they did, and the whole country struck with them because the cooking oil by the government, the military government at the time, had just gone astronomical. And so they marked that as when their world changed, their first human evolution changed. And it was then that I realized, hey, I better not be so certain about my definition of the first human evolution ending, because all of a sudden we're going to start having an argument. No, no, it's going to end there. No, it wouldn't. And then, so I think that's a discussion that we have to have. When did it end? But I'll tell you right now, we are in the suspended human evolution because we can't keep going the way we've been going. The first human evolution is still very much with us. And you can look at our leadership, you can look at the wars that are occurring, you can look at the fact that, and this is a very painful thing, the United Nations and World Health Organization had a chart that is the Millennium Development Goals. There are 17 items on that colorful block list, like eliminating poverty, getting more solar, having, yeah, yeah, I can't remember all of them, but one of them is not population, dealing with the population. Well, we got to deal with the population. We can't just keep not talking about it. So at that point, when I started realizing that there was a big missing block on their chart, that we're using the wrong terminology. So remember, I'm saying we've got to start using the right words. And so guess what? I realized that you can't tell anybody anywhere in the world, including my family or anybody else, it's population control, because the first thing they think is either communist or Planned Parenthood. So I changed it. Let's call it population continuity. Population continuity. And the beauty of that is that I can talk with the individual and say, well, have you had your kids yet? No. Well, you could replicate yourself. You replicate yourself. Your wife can replicate her, and so you've got two kids, and you've replicated yourselves, and that's population continuity. You have helped the future of humanity while you have given yourself some immortality as well. My
That's,
wife and I did that.
that's
My
brilliant.
wife and I have two children. I got fixed at that point. Anyway, so suspended human evolution, we better start talking about the problems, about whatever that first human evolution end is, because if we don't back up,
Yeah,
way back, and define humanity and what humanity and its evolution has been up to this point, then we're not going to get very far. Got
yeah,
to
I
use the
agree with
right
that.
words.
Yeah, I agree. It's interesting because I find that, I remember as a kid growing up, you could go out and drink water from the hose. We all did it as a kid. It was clean, it was fresh, it was good. Now you can't do that. They say don't drink water from the hose because it comes from a different area. Water's in short capacity. We are in a drought here in Arizona. The although California got swamped with snow last year, but they were in a major drought and doing
That's
in
right.
doing water restrictions and getting ready to do water restrictions. And the Colorado River's done water restrictions now. They've taken water away from different states as it comes down,
Yeah.
down through, and they've taken away from farmers, which in turn creates a problem for the farmers because now you're affecting the food that's being grown here. And Arizona provides a large amount of food across the country, and it's a never ending type opportunity for failure at some point. Because so I agree with you in regard to that. My mother was part of a 9-member family. I mean 9 kids. My wife and I had 2 because same thing we were just thinking with you. It's the purpose of having. We're probably going to get in trouble for this. You know that. The purpose back then, way back, like when my mother was born in 1934, somewhere there about 1934. So I'm thinking my father was born in 1936, my mother was born in 1934. So back then, it was a multitude. You keep having kids. You have 6, 7, 8, 9 kids, and they'd work the farm. My parents came from that direction. They would be built-in labor, right? So you don't have to hire anybody else. You got your kids going out here doing the labor. Well, we don't have that now, kind of a situation. I think continuity is a good word instead of control. Plus, it's feasible when you stop and look and think about the fact that we are still in this world together. Land is being eaten up. Places for people to live is getting eaten up. Places to build houses or buildings or homes is getting eaten up. Water is getting, eaten up. Although on the East Coast, it's like flooding and raining and flooding and raining and flooding and raining,
Right.
kind of a thing. Do you think, and I know that you said earlier, the first human evolution is kind of, you felt it ended in the 60s. Why do you think it ended in the 60s as compared to the 80s?
Oh, I, that's first of all, that's my take, and it's my take probably because that was also the period when we realized that China was over there. I mean, I don't know. I mean, I was going to school learning about American history and European history, but there was nothing about China. And so Nixon goes over there, and wow, he comes back, and we say, "Oh, that's interesting. He went the other direction. Oh, wow, look at that over there." And then I had a wall map behind my bed at home when I was 15, 14 years old, and it had a bunch of places on the map that said unexplored territory. I was like, oh, this is interesting. This was the map that my parents got. Well, by the mid 60s, everything had been explored. We pretty much have people all over the world where they can live and where most people live. And so I realized that at that point, sometime in the mid 60s, that's when we realized, I mean, this is obviously egocentric because, the people who were living in Myanmar, uh, they were amazed when I showed up. Who the heck is this? They didn't know what America was. So it's egocentric in that that's when I thought that the second human evolution ended. So I think that we have a responsibility to look at the things that happened, like, for instance, the peace movement. The peace movement began. The, the, the Black Lives Matter origins began then at that time when Stokely Carmichael and God thank the Lord for Martin Luther King. I mean, that's like it's when all these things happen where our population was smart enough to realize that wow, this is a change. And don't forget the Beatles. I remember this is when the Beatles came around too. So we got to give them
Yes,
credit.
you
Now,
can't
music
forget the
changed,
Beatles.
movies changed. It's
Yeah.
like a lot of changes happened in the mid 50s, mid
Yep.
60s, you name it. I don't want to spend my time trying to put my finger on exactly the right time, because I think the point is we are in this suspended period where we're struggling. We're flopping around like fish on a deck. We have not realized what happened, and this massive $2.5 million year period that occurred is over because we've been successful. I mean, we have procreated until here we are with 8.5 billion people. You
Well, I think
know,
with
whatever
everything, I mean,
changed
we've
that?
we've progressed with everything. We've progressed with technology, and I mean,
Oh,
look at our phone. My iPhone has like 1,000 times more powerful than what was used to put the module on the moon.
wow.
That whole system up there. So I think I'm a Star Trek kid. Grew up with Star Trek. You are too. Yeah, I wish I could do that. My hands won't let me do that anymore. But if you think back on Star Trek, they were walking around with iPads.
That's true.
You know what I mean?
That's true.
If Star Trek,
Yeah.
Star
Yeah.
Trek Next Generation, they had
Yeah.
iPads, they had communicators. My first flip phone looked just like one of the communicators from Star Trek, and I was ecstatic about that. My kids go, "Why do you want that? Why do you want that?" I'm like, "Because I can do this," and
Well, look, we're
whip it open.
teleporting right now. You know.
Oh, it's exactly, exactly. You remember we used to watch them on, and this was unfeasible at the time, but you would be watching Captain Kirk and the crew of the Enterprise, or even Star Trek Next Generation, whichever one of those, and they say, having a communications coming through, Captain, put them up screen. They put them on a big screen and they have a conversation back and forth like we're doing right now. So yeah, and
Yeah.
now it's evolved into something like that. So I think that although I do agree with you that we're kind of in a suspended holding pattern, I do believe that we're still evolving in certain areas. But my personal opinion is I
Yeah.
think we're also falling back on a few areas. I think we're taking a step back in climate change and global warming, and we won't go like huge into this because I I believe in global warming and climate change having an effect on global warming from my perspective. In regard to that, the I think we're a little too late on some things, and that we're just on the cusp of being too late on many more things that would help us keep our planet alive, so that we can continue to live here. That's why I think that although we may be in a suspended evolution, I think even from that perspective, come to think of it, while I pause for a second with that, I guess the fact that we're at that cusp and we got people trying to do something with it and then other people fighting against doing that change, that
Oh
still
yeah.
puts us in suspense, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. And by the way, I like how you took apart the suspended human evolution, and I'll tell you why. You used the word back. We're going back. Well, when I saw Trump's talking about uh, "Make America Great Again," I'm saying again.
We've
When
never stopped
when
being
was
great.
it great? So when you said back, I
Yeah.
was thinking, yeah, now we have a demarcation of where back is, and that's the end of the first human evolution. And where we're trying to go forward, that's the beginning of the second human evolution, which we have not planned yet.
Yeah.
But so we're starting to look, as you have pointed out, there's technology here now that is definitely moving. I think it's moving us forward.
I do. I
And
agree
I
with that.
think AI is helping us move in a direction that we haven't put our fingers on it yet, but it's going to help us in our communication,
Yeah.
I believe, in such a way. And look at the robotics that they're using on the moon and the robotics they're using to make things right now. I feel
Or
that
yeah.
we are advancing, that we have to use the advances in technology to help us advance as human beings. But when I watch what's going on in Gaza and other places in Ukraine,
Across the world.
but also the poverty that I've seen,
Yeah.
and I've seen it all over the world. I mean, it's awful. And I mean, I've been around the world. I've been in a lot of different countries, and I see
Yeah.
poverty everywhere I go. And there's a lot that we have to do, and that isn't changing. So how are we going to change it? One of the things that I learned when I was in Myanmar, I learned more about the immense number of non-government organizations that are out there. Bill and Melinda Gates, they're one of many, and they're doing a great job. And I was totally surprised how many other non-government organizations were in Myanmar helping the people when we were there. And same thing when I was in Vietnam. The number of NGOs that were there, it's staggering. In fact, there were so many that sometimes you'd see wars between them. Oh no, that's my turf. Oh no, that's my. There would be turf wars between the NGOs. Some of them would be just doing too much instead of helping the people do it themselves, which is one of the things that we refuse to do. I mean, I've made lots of mistakes before in other countries, and I realized I'm not going to do that same thing, because my goal was we got to help the people help themselves, and that's something that we have to do more of during the suspended human evolution. Otherwise, we aren't going to be able to have them join us in this conversation. So, education, this is what you're doing. This is your podcast, the education part. This is what you're doing. You're helping people get to the point where they can use the right words to discuss. How can we reach out to the impoverished people, the poor people, the homeless people in this world, and help them join our conversation, because there are more than 5 billion of them, I'm sure.
Well, yeah, easily, and that doesn't that also includes the ones here in the United States. We have a very large portion of kids that are growing up without lunch and without breakfast, and
Yes.
no, holes in their shoes, and not have full access to medical facilities and or clothing or shelter. And sometimes people forget that although we do live in the greatest country in the world, we do live in the United States, that there are situations here that could use some help. We were part of that. We contribute to part of that. We overlook part of that. And I think that they need to open their eyes a little bit more. I mean, I haven't traveled the world, but as a cop, as a law enforcement officer, I went into the ghetto areas. I went into to where people were living in
Yes.
tents and then on the street
Right.
and under the bridges and in caves even, and things like this. And that's not something that should actually be anywhere, whether it be here in the United States or anywhere else. We should be able to open the door of opportunity for those individuals to be able to, as you said, join this conversation and to be
What
able
have
to.
you learned? You've been, how long have you been podcasting?
This is going into my fifth year.
So you've talked to a lot of people, and a lot of different people from different walks of life and different
Yeah.
professions. And I mean, I'm one of many. I don't know the other people that you've talked with, but you do. And I'm curious as to what have you learned from the people that you've talked with, where there's a commonality among us. Are there any commonalities in what we are trying to
Or
discuss?
yes, there are. In my particular case, I've had over 400 conversations so far, and
Wow.
that's growing. And the commonality that I find within it is that we all have compassion and a humanity within us to change the world in some aspect or another and change people's lives for a positive, and take them out of a negative situation, whatever it happens to be, and move them forward in a positive way and help them to sustain and use the tools, the knowledge, and the experience that we can provide to them in whatever means to help their lives improve overall, in that both mentally, physically, environmentally, all the way across the board. So the commonality that I have found in my conversations, at least in this podcast, run along that gamut. Something that we all want to be able to inspire people, motivate people, and educate people, and that we want to be able to give people the tools and the opportunity to move themselves forward in a positive way.
Your first answer was compassion. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Your second was technology. And then your third was education. So if I'm looking at your top three that you have gleaned, Wow, that's got to be the basis for hope. Thank you.
Thank you. You're welcome. I believe that do have the opportunity within ourselves to be able to create the audience that we need in order to pull together what we can do to contribute to the world. I've been grateful when I say this out loud, not egotistical. I'm grateful that I'm heard in 59 countries. I am grateful that I have an audience that is worldwide. I have spoken to people all over the world. So it's not just in just here in the United States. It's not just here in Arizona. I've spoken to people from all over the world, and that everything that I just told you, that common thread runs through those conversations that we have. And I wholeheartedly believe that we all need to take the steps to implement the tools. Like you had, that's what I like when before we started on this conversation, in this particular conversation, and in the beginning of it, that we all have the opportunity to present tools and hope and inspiration for people to know that there is opportunity. Hope is a powerful word. Hope is a powerful
Yeah.
feeling.
Yes.
When you give somebody hope, you give somebody especially positive, and then you give them a little nudge, or you take their hand, or you push them from behind just a little bit when they need it, you pull them up when they need it, or you walk beside them and hold their
Mm,
hand. It's something that we all, as a human being, we are all connected in this world. We are all part of one. And doing that and looking at it from that point of view, we're all here to help each other move forward. We're all here to help each other push from behind or pull up or walk beside and hold their hand or carry
yeah.
if need be. And then those that ignore or step out of that realm, to me, I feel are governed by unethical, immoral practices that are based upon
Oh,
greed.
yeah.
I mean,
Right.
this is a lot of my soul coming out here. I believe
Amen.
are based upon greed and selfish, narcissistic
Right.
opportunities to benefit themselves more than benefit us and those around us.
Here, here. Uh, I could give you a standing ovation, but my head would be lost on the top of the screen. The key is we've got to start defining when we say we're moving forward. Okay, what is forward? And, this is part of your responsibility to ask these questions, not necessarily to get the answers, but to start these balls rolling in their head. What is that? Make America great again? Well, again, what? When before penicillin or after?
Yeah,
I mean, what?
yeah,
You know, let's
yeah.
uh, let's define when America was greater than it is right now, because I think America is great right now, and I think that podcasts are really helping this process along, and our process is the solution. Now, I put that quote on the front cover of my book. The process is the solution,
Yeah.
because okay, AT&T has a expression that they wrote. It was their advertising slogan that the system is a solution. And no, I love their. By the way, it was a great great saying, and everybody knows it. So, or I should say, some people know it. At any rate, um, the system is the result of a good process.
Yeah.
Now, to start the discussion about where we've been, where we are now, and where we're going, the first human evolution, the suspended, and the second human evolution yet to come, is to do the pre-planning that requires us to establish a process. Well, guess what? What you're doing is the process. That's the pre-planning process. What you are doing right now and have been doing with all the people that you've been working with and all the people you're going to be working with from now on, you are in the pre-planning process. It's just a lot of talk, and we're bringing together ideas. And like those Burmese people who said, "Oh no, your idea of the first human evolution ended in 1988 at the Saffron Revolution," and I said, great, thank you. This is the
Exactly.
discussion. This is the discussion. And your idea, your comments that you made that really pulled together a lot of the commonality among all your people, which starts with the compassion and the technology and the education. I mean, that's the basis of hope that we bring to this conversation. We have to have something that we bring to the conversation. And that's why I'm just bringing care for peace, those three words, to the conversation, because it requires us to actively care for a dynamic peace.
Yeah.
Okay, let's talk about it. Those are my words. What are your words? What,
Well, and I think I
I
agree
need
with
to.
you. Yeah, I 100%. And I think that, some of the things that I think are in your book that we all need to, and I agree with this wholeheartedly, especially with this conversation we just had. We all, as a human being, as an individual, and as a human being, as part of society and culture, need to adopt a global perspective with long term vision on what we're going to
Yes.
do and expect within, and how we're going to fix things that are broken, and how we're going to be able to collectively save, for example, our planet. And all of a sudden everybody's recognizing, holy crap, this is happening, this is happening, this is a direct result of this.
Right.
Now we have to take a perspective, a global perspective, not just from our own, not just here in Arizona, not here, not in California, not in on the East Coast. It has to be a global perspective. It has to be a
Yeah.
collective that says we are going to look at this from this perspective, and that we're going to implement systems and implement a process in a system that will then help us preserve mankind. Because we don't. We're all, well. This goes a little way over here, but mankind's going to be extinct. We're
Right.
going to wipe ourselves out.
Right. Yeah. My one of my recent podcasts as a guest was someone who wanted to talk just about the sixth the sixth extinction, and he wanted to spend a lot of time discussing what it was that we were headed for, and it was a good for me because I was listening to, oh, I'm up against doomsayers, and I and by the way, he was very positive. So it's not
Right.
but he was really focusing on, okay, what are we going to do to either stop this? I appreciated it. It was very good. So
Well,
yeah,
the key to any success in anything, especially in this particular case, is communication. You had brought this
yeah,
up throughout this whole conversation. We have to communicate and to communicate properly. And when I say properly, I don't mean that you have to use proper English and you have to enunciate all your words and you have to say
yeah,
this, thou, thee, thy. We have to communicate in an effective and efficient manner to allow
yeah,
a sense of responsibility and accountability for our actions and for those
absolutely.
actions around us, and for those individuals that are rather trying to sabotage the process or take that process and turn it into something it really shouldn't be.
Mm, mm. I'd like to address a previous comment that you were talking about. We have to look at things from a global perspective. And let me explain something very quickly. When we went to Myanmar the first time, we were talking to the top people in Aung San Suu Kyi's government at the top government level about what it is that we wanted to do. And it was care for peace because we had a premise. Here's a country that has been under military rule and British rule and East Indian and you name it, Chinese, all sorts of invaders, um, and tribal animosities, ethnic problems. I said, look, if we care for the people in terms of healthcare, public utilities, community development, and education, we might lay the groundwork for peace in your country. So they said, that's great. They signed us on. We have two memorandum of understandings. Okay, that's how deep we got into this promise, this premise. And we ended up going to a village and converting the idea of care for peace at the village level. So now we have a village where their community development and health center is working so well. they're doing new businesses and everything else, and they're taking care of their people. And the whole thing I do write about in the book is that, okay, we were going to do this on a national level with expanding that one village to 250, but hey, let's just do this on the global level, because that's the idea that we started out with. We can do this idea that's a national idea and do it on the global level. So believe me, I have to say fantasies right now of being able to go to Ukraine and build a whole bunch of community development and health clinics, and anywhere in South America and more places in Africa and South Asia. It's this whole thing, as you say, is it's got to be looked at from a global perspective, and that's where we started when we were first in Myanmar. And I'm even more riveted on that now that I've written a book and I've had to talk about it. So these podcasts have been great for me. So
I'm
and
sure.
you're the best.
Yeah.
Really appreciate it.
Well, and the use of the technology and the science and helping to further that whole benefit, I think is an important thing you brought up earlier about the technology and so forth. But you combine that with the science that provides factual aspects of what we are here for and what we need to do. You put those in conjunction with the communication, and I think that it would give. I know I say the word opportunity a lot, but opportunity is a magic door. You either open it or you if you don't open it, then you lose that opportunity. You open it or you open
Yeah,
the window and you have opportunity
right.
to step
Right. And
into. Or,
there's also a limit in time, because when we went to Myanmar, Aung San Suu Kyi said to us and a whole bunch of other people when she came to San Francisco to speak right after we got there, and I think it was 2012, she said, "We need change, but we need to have visible change, and we need to have it soon." And with that in mind, you know, we ended up saying, "Okay, that's great. Here's some change." And we gave them a van and we gave them a whole bunch of computer equipment, just so that when we went back after she said that, we could say, "Here, we're starting." Even if it's something small, the clinic hadn't been built yet, so yeah, I mean, we've got to realize that time is of the essence in this. We've got to keep this serious talk going, because this is pre-planning. This is not planning. And so we got to collect all the information, and that's what you're doing. And then we have to start planning.
how do you think we develop a culture of cooperation and solidarity between all these human groups, to embrace what you're trying to do?
Well, a simple answer would be language. If those people on Babel, they were thrown out of Babel when they were already on the top floor. You gotta wait. You gotta start from the beginning. So we've got to decide how we're going to talk and what tools we're going to use in the language to speak. Because, for example, Muslim women are not allowed to be educated. But my father, who was a, let's see, maternal and data management expert, teacher at University of Hawaii, and he ended up being asked by the governor to help work in the Federated States of Micronesia. He went there and he said that the Muslim women and the Catholic women, they still talk, they still educate, because they use what's called the coconut wireless. And so education occurs, the communication occurs. So we just have to make sure that we tap into all those forms of communication with the language. And if we need translators, that's fine. But we need to be talking about the same thing. And now I don't know if that answers your question, but it's got to be the
No, I did.
simplest thing
I
that
think it
we got
did.
to do.
Yeah, I think we all need to have a starting point. I mean, especially if we're just coming into this
Yes.
conversation, you need to have a starting point before you can, even decide how you are going to be able to contribute to
Yes.
to the forward movement of trying to basically help get us into the second evolution, and moving forward and moving humanity forward as a whole. Um, how do you think self limitation and market regulation would have a playing factor in this?
Oh, I'm sorry. The first one.
Self limitation
Oh,
and market
yeah.
regulation.
Well, I think that I mean, just off the top of my head, I totally believe in market regulation. I believe in our laws. I believe in rule of law. And I think that this discussion that seems to be out there, I haven't got my arms around it. But when Biden says it's between democracy and autocracy, and I'm thinking, well, wait a minute. In a good democracy, you have bureaucracy, and bureaucracy is our delegated autocracy. We follow the laws. That's somebody telling me what to do, and I'm following the laws. So I think we've got to. We this is part of the answer to your last question. I think after language, we've got to start looking at the commonalities between what people think are rigid, like democracy, or what was it? Someone said, "Oh, Hardy, you're just a not a communist, but a uh, soci- socialist." Yeah, and I says, "Well, what part of me is socialist, and what part of me is communist, and what part of me is a Democrat and a Republican?" I mean, cut this stuff out. We got to start talking about the specific issue. And to talk about
Right.
specific issues, we've got to back up where we're not talking about abortion, but we're talking about population continuity. That's the first discussion. You want to talk about abortion? Fine. I'll talk about abortion, but not now. We got to talk about population continuity. That's where we better start. We better talk about all those people who get on boats in northern Africa and are trying to get away from Africa. I mean, this is not people
Yeah.
saying, "Oh, I'm going to go to India." Excuse me, I'm going to go to Italy or Sardinia or whatever. I want to get away from Africa because there's no, your word, opportunity. And so, we've got to look at what we're doing in the process of making babies. You go to Mali, and the average number of children per woman is 11 children. And I'm going, okay,
Smokes.
what, I can understand Social Security at its base level, but what are we going to do to help get to the point where they don't have to do that and they can trust a government of the people, by the people, for the people to support a Social Security system?
Yeah. Yep. 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 And don't count on 11 kids. Holy smokes! I had trouble raising two.
So did I.
Yeah, it's like holy smoke. And something that never ends. My kids are still
Yeah.
30, 31, and 33, and it's still, hey dad, hey dad.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
Money, 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 money. And I have four grandkids, and they're a handful. We have of the whole grandkid raising
exactly.
process. I mean, we haven't. So we got two sons. Now I got four grandkids. Oh my God,
It's
it
like
does
holy
never
smokes.
end.
It's all
But
good.
it's wonderful.
Well,
It's wonderful.
this has all been like really fantastic, and I know that you have your Care for Peace organization is a nonprofit organization that helps countries all over the world. Your book in itself is available. I think it is at Amazon as well as a link off of your site, I believe. So, can you tell us a bit about Care for Peace in your book and where to get them, or how to get in touch with you?
Well, the book is really 50 years of me putting together my thoughts. I took notes on paper. It ended up going, some of them went on a typewriter, and then finally it went on a computer over the years. Uh, but it started with the Care for Peace templates. Now, I haven't talked about that at all, but in the book, you can see the four Care for Peace templates. And they're my tools for discussing the from to, when it comes to from the first human evolution to the second human evolution. What are we, how are we going to talk about it? Well, If we're talking about uh, sorting garbage, I think we're moving pretty well from where we were throwing stuff out our windows into our neighbor's yard. I think we're doing better at taking care of our waste. I look at our waste management here in my own town, Novato, California, and it's wonderful. We've got a one. I'm talking about water waste, sewage waste, you name it, and they're even testing the sewage waste to see if there's any coronavirus inside of that so that they can determine if there's going to be a problem and we need to do more proactive things. So uh, these are things that I haven't even been talking about because I'm already working on my second book, and it is about the templates that I have put in the first book, but the first book I just pretty much talk about them. I don't break it out because the first template is my personal template. The second template is our relational template, how we're interacting. And, look at these wars around. You've got to start looking at wars in the way, well, that's what we used to do. That's a first human evolution one. Now, what's the second human evolution? Well, we avoid all that stuff at all costs, but what do we do now? Okay, where are we at now when it comes to warmongering between the first human evolution and the second human evolution? And so that's the relational we have to start talking about. We have to talk about it in terms of our cultural. Cultural is the balance between physical and spiritual in terms of, well, our physical needs and our spiritual needs. And that's where communism fell apart in its implementation. They didn't get the balance right. And so we've got to make sure we've learned from the past so we don't repeat it. That's where we go. And then the last template is our organizational template that really looks at the from to when it comes to where are our organizations between diversity versus singularity, you could call it, curb the market. The first human evolution was, take no prisoners. The second human evolution goes back to your question about market stabilization, market control, regulation. So that's the fourth template. I talk about them in the first book, that is To Care for Peace, because I want people to get the right words. And now my second book is to really get into those templates and help people understand their responsibility to put themselves where they think they are in relation to the first human evolution and the second human evolution as they define it, and where are they in between. You got to have people get away from looking at things from their opinion. We've got to have people look at things in relation to an issue that is out there in the middle that we can talk about. Well, my slider is really closer to the first human evolution on that one, but you're saying that your slider is way over here on the from to scale. Uh, no, I mean, that's the conversations that we have to have. So
And that's where the book is. Now, it comes on your website. What's your website, please?
uh, Care for Peace, all one word, CAREFORPEACE.org, O-R-G. If you miss and go.com, you'll get my old website. So that's cool too, I guess.
So it kind of works out either way, but I'll make sure there's a link in the
Yep.
show notes so that everybody has an easy way to get a hold of
Thank
that.
you.
And they can find that link to the book on there as well, correct?
Absolutely.
Absolutely. Look, this has been a really great conversation, and we could continue to talk for a whole another hour, Jeff. We'll have to have you back on. So when you get your other book done and you've got your templates out, maybe we can come back and talk about the templates and how to implement them.
Michael, I would be absolutely honored.
That would be great. I'll make sure that we do that. This is one more thing before you go. Before we go, do you have any words of wisdom you can share?
The first sentence in the book, I will repeat it. To care for peace, that's to care for peace, might not be the secret of life, but it's as close to the secret of living there is.
That's brilliant. Brilliant words of wisdom. That's a great way to. I might have to end every conversation with that quote.
You may steal it. There's no copyright on me because I believe that the best change agents in the world are invisible. That's me. I'm invisible.
That's kind of
Let's just
unique. That's
pass.
unique as well. That's pretty cool. Well, again, Jeff, thank you very much for. I'm glad that we connected. I really appreciate what you're trying to do for this world and for those of us in it and that live here. So continue, please, to do that. I will do my part in helping to contribute to the next evolution that we're moving forward to. And again, we'll have you back on the show when you get your next book done. So everybody kind of look for that.
I've really enjoyed our conversation, Michael. Really enjoyed it.
Me
Thank
as
you so
well.
much.
And for everyone else out there, please, one more thing before you all go. Have a great day. Have a great week. And thanks for listening.
Thanks for listening to this episode of One More Thing Before You Go. Check out our website at beforeyougopodcast.com. You can find us as well as subscribe to the program and rate us on your favorite podcast listening platform.